Hey friends! Welcome to the Drug Prevention Power Hour, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. After creating a student-led movement hosting epic drug-free events across the nation, your host, Jake White, dedicated himself to making the prevention field more fun, impactful, and relevant for today's youth. So if you're in education, counseling, public health, prevention, or just a caring adult looking for strategies to protect your kids, we hope you subscribe and learn from every show. Coming to you from Jake White and his team at Vive 18, enjoy this episode of the Drug Prevention Power Hour.
Welcome back to another episode of the Drug Prevention Power Hour. I'm your host, Jake White, and today I'm hanging out with a new friend, Margy Schaller. And Margy is best known as a speaker coach and owner of the Schaller Speaker Academy. She got sober in 2005, and back then there was still a lot of stigma around sobriety. And when she finally got the courage to publicly share her sobriety at 10 years sober, she was once again advised to stay silent and avoid judgment. Now with 19 years of sobriety, she's stepping out of the shadows and celebrating a lifestyle that has brought her clarity and inner peace. And the thing that I want to talk to you most about is Margy is the co-founder of Sober Life Rocks, a membership-based community of people who choose not to drink, are sober-ish, sober-curious, or sober wingmen. Their mission is to help normalize sober choices and offer support to professionals who choose not to drink or drink less at work events. That's so cool, Margy. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
I'm super excited, Jake.
Yeah, okay, so I have to ask right away. Well, I guess, you know what? Let's start with the simple stuff. Where you're from, what you do, like, with Sober Life Rocks, and then I've got just really curious about your journey to get here. So we'll dive in there.
Sure.
I gotta calm myself down. So yeah, give us your good old intro.
Yeah, so I'm in Seattle. Been here for about 5 years, transplanted from San Diego, so went totally opposite climates. But my co-founder, Laura Nelson, and I founded Sober Life Rocks a year ago. And the best way to describe what happened is to tell you the story about how that was born. So if I can dive right into that.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned in my intro, I've been secretly sober in my professional life all this time. And so very, very few people knew that I didn't drink. And Laura was one of them. And a year ago, we were at a women's retreat. And it was about 125 women, and we knew most of them. And she was on this mind-body health panel. And she's been sober at that time for about 4 years. And she's always been like, just, out loud sober, like TikTok sober. And so she was sharing about how, it had just been this life changer for her and how it had been kind of like the final puzzle piece in getting her life on a better track. And just sort of spontaneously, she said, how many women in this room don't drink for whatever reason? So in that moment, I had this choice. And I'm like, oh man. And so I start slowly raising my hand and I'm looking around the room. And Jake, like 25% of the women in the room are doing the same thing.
Wow.
And we knew all these people and we had no idea about each other.
Oh my goodness.
And Laura and I looked at each other, we're like, what? How is this possible? Mm-hmm. And so we realized that there's a problem. And the problem is this shame and stigma. And maybe we share it with our friends or family, but in the workplace, it's like we're afraid. We're afraid to share that we're sober, for crying out loud.
Isn't that weird that we're afraid to share a healthy choice?
Right? It's the only drug that if you don't do it, you are shamed.
Yeah.
So we grabbed each other, we went to lunch and we sat down and I said, this has to change, but the change has to start with me. Like I can't put baby in the corner anymore. And so that's when Sober Life Rocks was born. And we said, the first thing is to just normalize it. to normalize choices that people have around alcohol. And that means if they choose to drink alcohol, cool. If they choose not to drink alcohol, cool. Like, it's all good. It shouldn't matter what's in your cup.
Yes. Wow. Okay. See, I know exactly now. Kira wanted us to meet because I I went through the same thing. What you had found in that room, that's how I felt on my college campus. Was, oh, as soon as I told somebody I didn't drink or smoke, I felt judged. I felt like they didn't get me or they wouldn't invite me to things. And that
Right?
did happen to a certain extent. And so I just learned, oh, you should not tell people that. Like, that's not socially acceptable. And then there came this moment when I read a statistic of what you saw in that room. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
saw in the room that there are more people like you. I read it in an article
Yeah.
and thought, all right, well, I'm going to test that then and see if they're out there. And once I started throwing these drug-free, house parties, those people showed up. And it wasn't just the people raising their hands. It was the other ones who maybe they did drink other nights, but they wanted to come check out this new thing where they can have fun and make friends without that extra substance involved. So
Exactly.
it's
And
really interesting.
that's why we had this notion of having this big tent. Because what we have learned is that there are people who, maybe they're sober like me in recovery. Maybe they don't drink for religious reasons, or maybe they just want the healthier lifestyle. And then we have a number of people who they just don't drink at professional events because they want to show up as their best self, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they're sober-ish all across the board. They might have a drink at a wedding, right? A celebratory champagne or something. But in general, it's not their lifestyle. And all of these people are all struggling with the same, like, let's hide what we're doing behind a club soda and lime, right?
Right.
It's the most absurd thing.
Well, okay, I want to remember to ask you this, and I don't know. I want to dive into what Sober Life Rocks does, like how
Yeah,
does it show up in the world? And then um, I want to remember, so I'll say it out loud now. I want to ask you how it was in the corporate world those 10 years when you didn't say something, like what that experience was all about. But first, can you
yeah,
tell us about Sober Life Rocks and
sure.
what do you guys do? What happens?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'm going to be fully transparent. Like, we are a work in progress. We are here to serve our community. And so what that looks like is ever evolving because the needs of the group are. At its core, what we wanted to do was two things. The first thing was to really provide a safe space for people who choose not to drink or drink less, where we were celebrated, where it's okay, like it's all good. And so we do have a membership. It's $9 a month, and the idea is, first of all, we send daily emails, short little emails, and these are inspirational or thought provoking. But the idea is that if you're going to an event, let's say you're going to a national sales meeting, like, you've got us in your back pocket, right? When you wake
Okay.
up in the morning, you've got that little jolt of, oh, okay, it's good, I'm good, right?
Yeah, I belong
And then,
somewhere. I'm
yeah,
accepted.
exactly. Exactly. Right now, we're actually building the fastest growing sober community on LinkedIn, Sober Life Rocks Professionals. And there we're just trying to have conversations. When somebody goes to an event and they're like, oh my God, this crazy thing just happened, like, we can talk about it there, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've tried different things. We're open to different things. So as the community's growing, we're pivoting. We also do have a podcast which I run, and so we just try to bring in interesting guests as well and talk about just this dynamic. There's lots and lots of people who do a great job of helping people get sober. That is not Sober Life Rocks. Our
Right.
niche is that we haven't found anywhere else that really addresses that workplace.
Hmm.
In your personal life, you can choose to go to a New Year's Eve party or not. But if you are asked to go to a work party, you kind of have to go. And if drinking is the currency of connection at most of these events and you're sober, it can feel uncomfortable. So we
Yeah.
really just wanted to create a home for those people. So that's
Wow.
kind of like niche number one of what we do. But the second
Okay.
thing that we wanted to do was because alcohol is so pervasive and meetings are struggling to get people to show up. The
And
only
when
thing
you
that
say meetings, you
conferences or sales meetings or even happy hours. Like, what do you do when you go to some event? It's like, hey, let's meet for happy hour. Or if you're a salesperson on the road and you'd have to take people out, like, let's go out and get some drinks. It's the
okay.
thing that we do to gather in our professional worlds.
Yeah.
As a team, we just hit this great milestone. Let's go out and get some drinks.
Right. And is that why when you in your bio you even mentioned like, hey, you were advised not to tell people this? Was it, as you had said, that connection currency? Were people worried that you weren't going to be successful because you wouldn't connect with others, or what was behind that
Well, if it's
statement?
okay, I'm gonna reserve that one for more of my origin story, and I'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
Um, but what we wanted to do was really just like lift the veil of um, awareness to create some idea in the minds of people who are putting together these events that can we do better? Can we offer some way to connect that isn't just over alcohol? And so, actually, Laura just published this book, The Inclusive Event Planner, and it's free for download on our website, or you can buy it on Amazon. And it's filled with just ideas about other ways to gather or adult beverages that don't have alcohol in them, and just understanding what the challenges are and how can we be more sober inclusive.
Oh, I
So that's
love that.
kind of the second leg of Sober Life Rocks is trying to change the industry just to be aware.
Okay, I love that. So just so I understand it correctly, the first area is you're a community where there's
Mm-hmm.
no stigma. You know that you are accepted, you belong, and you have your people and your support. If you are sober for any reason or any amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
you can be there. You can be one of many.
Yes.
The
And you can hide
second
in
part.
plain sight if you want to. Yeah,
Okay, perfect. And the second one is you are a resource for anyone who's hosting or planning a professional conference or meeting to be more mindful and inclusive of those who aren't using that substance. Um,
precisely. I mean, it's
okay.
no different than the days when vegetarian offerings, right? It used to be like your offerings was a salad or steamed vegetables. Or if there was a buffet line, like you had to go over to the special table to go pick up your vegetarian meal, right? I mean, it's
Okay.
crazy to think back to those days, but that's how it was. Or gluten
Yeah.
free. I mean, it was just, you had like this special thing, and here comes this special plate out here with this big sign on it. Oh, you're different, right? Today, it's
Yeah.
not that way. Today, it's easy. But
Yeah.
restaurants and bars, I think, are getting better at having a mocktail menu. But Jake,
Yeah.
the craziest thing is that in the meeting space, these conference centers and these hotels are not. We
Hmm.
go to these events, and I travel a lot for work, and so does Laura. And you go into the big conference room at the end of it, and they roll up the little black bars, crank up the music, turn down the lights, and everybody gets smashed.
Wow. That's wild. Um, I guess since I started my business in college, I've been doing this alternative. I've been sheltered from the corporate, like I guess lifestyle or culture, and how much it still might feel like being back on a college campus, I guess, in some of
It
these.
is, and there's that feeling of it being like the good old boys club, a little bit.
Hmm,
What's
yeah.
really cool, and maybe this is part of it too for you, is that the younger generations are not quite so keen on just getting smashed event after event. They're a lot more health minded, a lot more conscious of wanting to show up as their best selves. So I really have hope for the future. But in the meanwhile, everybody who's planning these things, one of the examples was this same conference, this women's conference, where Laura and I first had that aha moment. The woman who runs it is just this lovely Southern woman, beautiful, giving, thoughtful, and she loves her wine, which is cool. And so
Mhm.
every year she hosts the group at her home. She's got this beautiful, gigantic home, and after that moment, when 25% of the room said that they don't drink, she comes running up to Laura and says, all I have is wine and beer. Do you think I should get something else?
Yeah.
Like it just never occurred to her that anybody would want something else.
Right. Wow.
And
The
what
same
was
thing happens too at weddings. I feel like I've been to weddings where the bridal party is concerned about me being in the bridal party, because if everyone else is getting smashed and I'm not, am I going to have any fun? Am I going to be dancing with everyone and making a fool
right?
of myself? And the answer is yes,
Yes,
but they can't
absolutely.
believe it until they see it.
Yeah. I think that's a big fear a lot of people have, is that, am I ever going to have fun again?
Yeah.
And the answer is, not only do I have fun, but I remember how much fun it was without shame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's cool. I love your platform.
Thank
Sober
you.
Life Rocks.
Thank you. And it does, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so you asked me a question about that moment when I was shamed. I got sober at a time, 19 years ago, when there still was quite a bit of stigma about being sober. And I remember I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I remember going to AA meetings. And the club that I went to was on this main road in the area that I lived in. And I remember being afraid that people would see me. So I'd park around the back and I'd wait till the red light had turned green so people were driving faster, and I'd sneak around to go up to the meetings. Like, that's the kind of shame and stigma that I felt was going on at the time. And so back then, I had lots of people suggest that, you might just not want to say anything to people at work because you don't want them thinking, you're a under the bridge alcoholic failure, which I was totally good with. But at 10 years sober, I was just like, come on. Like, at this point, anybody who judges me, like, whatever. And
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to, I'm a speaker coach. And so I had the opportunity to give a talk at a conference that was full of speakers. And so this was my big moment. Like, I was going to introduce myself to this group, and I was going to, launch my business and get all kinds of great opportunities. And one of the things that I always teach people is that when you're first giving a talk to a brand new audience, it's really important for them to get to know you, like you, and trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought long and hard about it, and I said, my essence is I want to give back. And so I told a story, and I'm going to just give you the abbreviated version of it. But basically what I shared was, I grew up in an alcoholic household. My mom was an alcoholic, and life was chaos. And I vowed I'd never be like her. And of course, by my 20s, I had turned out to be very much like her. And I was creating my own chaos in my own life and my own kids' lives. And I'm sure that along the way, there was people there who could have helped me, but I didn't see them. And it wasn't until I got sober, and at the time I was able to say 10 years ago, that I had these amazing women show up in my life, and people who helped me like finish growing up and helped me learn to be more professional, or learn how to dress properly, or be a better mother, or learn how to be a better wife or employee, like all the things that my mom didn't raise me to know. And during my drinking days, I never knew. And so because of that, I'm so grateful. And I can never, ever repay those people. But the best that I can do is to pay it forward. And that means that I want to help you become the best person that you can be. Now, in that moment, the entire audience was on the edge of their seats, waiting to hear what I have to say next. And the rest of my talk went fantastic. And I had people, Jake, coming running up to me afterwards saying, like, how can I hire you? How can I hire you? Like, all my dreams came true in that moment. And then later that evening, two separate people came up to me who were very influential in that group. And they both said something like, great job, Margy, but you might not want to talk about that sober thing. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to judge you. And because that was my absolute worst fear, I never talked about it again in my professional world
Wow. Dang.
until that moment when Laura said, "Who here doesn't drink?" And now you understand why I was so hesitantly raising my hand and why I was so stunned that I wasn't the only one. There
Wow.
didn't need to be this shame or stigma anymore.
Yeah. And it was like that fear or anxiousness for you to share who you were. It it survived because you felt isolated in your decision. And once you realized you weren't the only one, this courage was lifted, and you knew, hey, like, you can't hurt me anymore by this. There's so
and
much freedom and liberation in knowing you're not alone.
and that's what we want to stand for. We want other people in their professional lives to see you're not alone.
Hmm. That's really cool. Ah,
It
I
makes
love
me
that story,
choke
Marty.
up thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And what's
such a
great is that we have had since then people come up to us who have heard our story and heard this mission and come up to us and just be like, I never ever told anybody before, but I'm sober too. And it's like we just get to give them a big hug and just throw the love around them. And
yeah.
people don't have to be shouting from the rooftops like we are today. That's why I said they can hide in plain sight in our group, because we have so many people who they're not there for recovery reasons, but nobody questions why we're part of the community. We have people who, as you said in the intro, we call our sober wingmen. And I would
Yeah.
say maybe like 15% of our members are drinkers who completely support this mission. And
Oh,
they just want to
cool.
be a part of, allies, if you will, just to raise up the awareness and the celebration and reduce the stigma.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love, so what I really resonate with is that maybe you had this feeling, right, of I can't share who I am because this it will affect my profession, or it will affect my social life. And that's exactly what I experienced and became my motivation for helping young people do what I do, which is basically we're running Sober Life Rocks, but for young people. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm in tears after a speech and working with students, helping them start these sober clubs and create events, I tear up because when they say, I realize I'm not alone and I don't need to hide who I am anymore, because I remember that feeling for me and what it meant. And because I don't have a recovery story, I'm for any time a student comes up to me and says either, hey, you gave me the strength to keep my decision, or, you know what, I'm actually not going to use marijuana anymore. This was
Mm-hmm.
really helpful. And I know that I can still have a social life. Like, automatically, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is the best job in the world. But I can see myself in the situation and the fear that they had,
Yeah.
and imagine the freedom that they feel getting to tell at least one person. And then just to get to say, I'm so proud of you. Like, what
Yes.
I'm learning is that needs to be the the phrase that is the most coming out of my mouth after I
Yes.
speak is, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Because if
1000%.
people can learn that young, that that's a good thing to be proud of, I think the world will change.
Which, a lot of people don't. Um, AA is not for everybody, and I no longer am deeply in AA. They'll always be my foundation, but it's not part of what I do today. But I think that the idea of celebrating milestones is still important,
Yeah.
because every day that you make that decision is a good day. But when you string together 30 days or 60 days or 5 years, whatever it is, like that is something to be celebrated and lifted up. And that notion of somebody saying to you, like, I'm proud of you, that is a big deal, because it counters that shame and it counters that stigma. Those are old messages, old tapes that don't have any place in today's world.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that sobriety today is becoming more acceptable. There's still stigma around asking for help and mental health and sobriety to a certain extent, but there's a movement. Like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
young people are more healthy and health conscious, beauty conscious, everything. But
Mm-hmm.
also, our generation of adults are saying, hey, I'm going to share my story too because media and commercialism promised me that alcohol was going to do this for me, and that's the way I grew up. And it's not the truth. It didn't deliver those things. Instead, it took my freedom, it took my relationships, it took my health,
Yeah.
and I want it back.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting that you focus on young people because, the idea of a lot of these conferences is that they're trying to attract the young people. And the only thing that they know to do that with is loud music and booze. Um, One of the things that we talk about is, can we do better, even just with the gatherings that we put together? Can it be something that's cause driven and have some sort of like charity fundraiser where we're doing something for the local food bank? Or can we even bring in the food bank and have a meal packing session? Can we bring in some local people who can have a panel about what's going on in the community? Like, are there things that we can do that would still be interesting and still fun and bonding, but not just the loud music in the bars?
Yeah, I think that providing loud music in a bars to attract young people isn't working as well as they think
Mm-mm,
it might be. It's probably
it's not.
they're thinking, oh, when I was young, that's what I like to do. But young people today, like you mentioned, they're cause oriented. They want to see good things in the world. They also want real connection because we're
Yeah.
not getting them from our phones. And so when we see the real thing, we really value it. And so if we can create those experiences where you're not pressured to go out and dance or listen to loud music. It's like, no, we love music, but you don't
Yeah.
have to blast it at
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And two, give us something to do together where we don't have to be social butterflies. So, Margie, if you and I are packing these meals together and there's music, there's no pressure for us to be social butterflies. We can
That's right.
joke around and have fun and connect easier because we're not staring at each other. We're doing something side by side. The pressure's off, and
Yeah.
we can make conversation at whatever pace we feel comfortable with.
That's right.
And that's super helpful. And also providing games and competitions that facilitate natural relationships
Yep.
and excitement without any, social lubricant. Like that is so effective for young people. And I think everybody, we love competing, we love goofing around and talking trash to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So like those are cool tips.
Yep. My dream. So, like, tell me if this would be appealing to the crowd that you know. My dream is these conference rooms. The big ones. They have these accordion doors that can like segment them into smaller rooms, right? So imagine
Mhm.
you rent out the whole thing and you put the accordion doors 2/3 of the way closed, but leave them 1/3 so you can cross between them. And in 1/3 on the end is the loud music and the dance floor. Now, in the middle section, so you can still hear that music, but it's not blaring so much, is like carnival games. And then in the final section, it's like a lounge setting with tables and sofas and quiet little lamps. So if you're in that third section and you hear your favorite song, you can be like, hang on, I'm going to go dance to this song. And then dance, 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 and then come on back and sit back down with your people, or stay in the carnival room and play lawn bowling or ring toss or whatever the fun things are. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, I love that for so many reasons. The first being you've taken care of every type of introvert or extrovert. They have a place to call home and still be a part of the event to not feel left out. Two is there's no way you would have known this, but when we teach students how to throw good events, we teach them to host their event from room to room, meaning you
Mm,
might start with the connection room, which I would open the carnival first, right? As soon as you jump into that event, you're playing games and you're making friends. That's a great energy and way to start an event.
mm-hmm,
And then when that room fills up or when you're ready, you open that second room and maybe it's the dance floor,
mm-hmm,
or maybe it's that extra sitting room. And what happens is the party never feels empty. It feels great. It feels fun. And now you have choices where you want to take it, because the ice was broken from the initial, first impression of your event. And you're like, dang, this is cool. I'm going to stay. And then you have the options of where you take your friends and your connections. And like I said, oh yeah, we're tired of dancing. We're kind of sweaty. Let's go, grab a Gatorade and let's go to the lounge room,
To the lounge,
or whatever that is. So I love that. I love that so much.
That's my dream. That's what I want. That's what I want when I go to my next conference, and I just have to talk somebody into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, Margy, we're at time right now. I want to give people a chance to follow you, what you're doing. So let's do this. If you could give, before we get your info, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's planning a conference or an event to be more inclusive and to adapt what you're doing, what's that one piece of advice you would give them?
First and foremost is just to have alcohol-free options that are not sticky juice. Like, we can have just as interesting drinks as the ones with alcohol in them, and then put what the options are in a little sign on the bar so that somebody who's feeling anxious can just point at it and say, I want one of those.
Okay, cool.
Yep. That would be the easiest, fastest thing that you could possibly do.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's really, really cool. And then, Margy, where can people go to learn more about Sober Life Rocks and all your great initiatives that you're doing?
Sure. Well, first and foremost is our website, so soberliferocks.com. And if you want to be part of the conversation, if you go to LinkedIn and search in groups for Sober Life Rocks professionals, it's free to join the conversation, whether you are somebody who drinks, doesn't drink, interested in the conversation, meeting planners, HR, bosses, employees. It's open to everybody. So we would love to have you join us there.
That's wonderful. Margy, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm proud of you. After a decade, and you are out living out loud, sharing, and I'm sure inspiring people just like your friends did for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. And I hope that anybody listening who is a professional and feels like they might be the only one in their community or at their work, you're not alone. We're here for you, whether you join us or not. We just want to know that you are not alone and it's all good.
Yes. Oh, that's a great way to end. This has been another amazing episode of the Drug Prevention Power Hour. Make sure to follow Sober Life Rocks. Check out their website. Check out vive18.com, all our platforms. And if you love this episode, please share it with a friend. Leave a review of the Drug Prevention Power Hour. And we'll see you next Monday for another episode.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Drug Prevention Power Hour podcast. If you love the show, make sure to leave a review and share what you've learned. And if you need help reducing substance use among youth by educating and engaging students in prevention, visit vive18.com for more information, tools, and resources.